Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Hill, I don't think there's a lot of questions that one of Putin's primary objectives within the United States is to foment unrest within our nation, to cause us to have lose confidence in our elections, the results of the elections, those kind of things. There is tension, though, in conducting our businesses the way we should, and playing into Putin's hands. As an example, while I disagree with what we're doing here today, it's under our Constitution, and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle believe that they are functioning under that Constitution. These hearings, this issue is very divisive within our country, and is continuing to push that way. I think that plays into Putin's hands inadvertently. Maybe nothing we can do about that. But there are certain things we can do as individuals that wouldn't play into his hands, and one of them would be that the loser in the 2016 election has for 3 years continued to argue that because she won the popular vote, as she and her friends won the popular vote, that somehow the election was inappropriate and that we shouldn't trust it, that the Electoral College victory, which was resounding, shouldn't be trusted. Does that help Putin or play into the narrative that he would like for us to do, that our elections are somehow rigged and shouldn't be trusted?
Yes, it does.
So the RT, Putin's, would you agree with me that RT is Putin's propaganda machine here in the United States?
I would agree with you, yes.
So is it appropriate for the RT to be used to affect public policy in our nation? As an example, there have been a long series of advertisements or programs on RT going against fracking, that saying that's bad and trying to affect public policy in the United States. Is that appropriate use, or should Americans be paying attention to that?
In the sense that Americans should be paying attention that RT and other outlets are used to propagate this kind of information, absolutely. I wasn't quite sure what you meant about should
just
be paying attention.
Fracking is a controversial issue within our nation. If we did away with fracking, the United States would not be in a position today to dominate the oil production within the world and would play into strengthening Putin's hands with respect to the oil.
That's correct. And actually, I'd like to point out that in 2011, in November 2011, I actually sat next to Vladimir Putin at a conference in which he made precisely that point. It was the first time that he had actually done so to a group of American journalists and experts who were brought to something called the Valdai Discussion Club. So he started in 2011 making it very clear that he saw American fracking as a great threat to Russian interests. We were all struck by how much he stressed this issue, and it's since 2011 and since that particular juncture that Putin has made a big deal of this. So
the extent that Americans pay attention to RT and are misguided by whatever propaganda he's going, it's not in our nation's best interest. Mr. Holmes, in your role, you're privileged to an awful lot of stuff, official things and things that are best kept between you and the official folks that you deal with. Is there an expectation among the principals that you represent that you will exercise some discretion in what you share with others about what goes on?
Yes, sir.
In your testimony, in your deposition, you made well, first off, we had a hard time pinning down the number of people that you've actually had this conversation with about the conversation that you overheard. Now, our ambassador had no expectation of privacy. He's blustering around and doing what he's done, but we couldn't figure out how many people you actually shared that information with. And I would argue that the information is unflattering to the president, unflattering to the ambassador, and that your discretion is at odds here. I mean, your testimony, your deposition said you shared that with folks who you thought would find it interesting. Well, I'd argue that everybody on the back row would find it interesting, but I don't know that that's necessarily a criterion. So on a go-forward basis, can you articulate that in the future, when you're privileged to certain circumstances that would be embarrassing to the principal, that if it's official that you share with the ambassador, that's fine, but the folks outside the embassy or folks even within the embassy that don't have a need to know, that you wouldn't regale them with your recounting of those instances?
Sir, I think it was Gordon Sondland who showed indiscretion by having that conversation over.
No, well,
that's the first thing. Second thing is,
excuse me, Mr. Holmes. Let me clarify the question.
Mr. Holmes,
the question wasn't. Excuse me, Mr.
Let him answer your question, sir.
It's my question. You're exactly right, and I get to clarify my question to get the answer. And I'm hopeful I get in a few more seconds because of the interruption from the chairman. His patience is growing thin. I was working hard not to irritate him again, but I failed again. The question is of you, Mr. Holmes. Your discretion. Gordon Sondland did not expect privacy. I got that. But you're going to be in rooms you've been in room 17 years where people trust that when whatever went on in that room and left, that you kept it to official channels, that you didn't share all that information with other folks. I'm just asking you to argue on your own behalf that interesting is not some sort of a criterion that you would use when you share information from meetings. Simple, straightforward question.
Sir, I shared the information that I needed to share with the right people who needed to know it. I did not share any information that people didn't need to know.
But you did use the word interesting,
Mr.
in your
Conaway,
deposition.
your time is
It
expired.
certainly was interesting, sir. And I would also hate to think that what I brought before this process, I shouldn't have done that. I've come here because you've subpoenaed me to share what I know, and I've done that.
As long as you're